Hello and welcome to our presentation. This study examines the effect of unconscious bias during video, defenders' race, and jurors' race on jury's decision in a murder trial. Currently, U.S. courtrooms using the unconscious bias jurors video. However, the efficacy of the video has not been tested. Past research showed the implicit racial bias can impact jurors' decision-making, resulting in altered trial outcomes. For example, Jews are more likely leaning towards defenders of their own race. Visual processing in theory informed our choice of ambiguous trial stimulus. Heuristic processing and biased thinking are more likely in ambiguous situations. We applied aversive rating theories together despite a utilitarian view, white individuals still harbor unconscious bias. Counterfactual thinking was also examined as it mediates variables of jury decision making. We hypothesized that 1. Jews who are of the defender's same race would be less likely to find him guilty and rate him higher in credibility. 2. The unconscious bias Jews video will have the greatest impact on verdicts and credibility rating for white Jews. And 3. Defenders' credibility and counterfactual endorsement will mediate race effect on verdicts.
We recruited 554 jury-eligible community members who identified as Black or white through a quadric survey. We used a 2x2x2 between subject design to study the effect of defendant race, juror race, and implicit bias video on verdict credibility and counterfactual endorsement. The unconscious bias juror video is approximately 11 minutes. A judge and 2 attorneys speak about implicit bias and explain the importance of avoiding biased thinking. Half of the jurors viewed the video prior to reading the trial transcript. Participants read a trial transcript describing a male defendant accused of killing his wife and charged with second-degree murder. The defendant claims that he is innocent and the gun went off when he tried to take it away from his wife who was attempting suicide. Participants then provided verdicts as well as ratings for defendant credibility and counterfactual endorsement of murder and suicide. Pilot work was previously conducted to examine trial ambiguity and racial bias effects.
Our results show that defendant race had significant effects on verdict and defendant credibility that were qualified by a defendant race by juror race interaction, as shown in figures 1 and 2. Contrary to hypothesis 1, white jurors were more likely to find the white defendant guilty and rated him as less credible than the Black defendant. Contrary to hypothesis 2, the unconscious bias juror video did not affect verdict or defendant credibility. However, exploratory analyses shown in figure 3 found that when the video was absent, endorsement of murder counterfactuals was greater for the white defendant than the Black defendant, but when it was present, defendant race did not affect endorsement of murder counterfactuals. We assessed murder counterfactuals through endorsement of if-then statements. For example, if the victim had not asked for a divorce, she would still be alive today. Finally, only white jurors' verdicts were affected by defendant race, and thus we only present mediation analyses for white jurors. Defendant race was negatively associated with a guilty verdict. Following the A1 and B1 paths, defendant race was positively associated with defendant credibility, which was then negatively associated with a guilty verdict. Following the A2 and B2 paths, defendant race was negatively associated with endorsement of murder counterfactuals, which was associated positively with guilty verdicts. Supporting hypothesis 3, these variables mediated the effect of defendant race on murder verdicts. If you would like to view more of our inferential statistics, please use the QR code on the poster to access our supplemental materials.
Our findings suggest an overcorrection of bias in white jurors. Compared to Black jurors, white jurors found the Black defendant more credible and guilty less often. These findings may be explained by the aversive racism theory. Recent events, such as the death of George Floyd, may have contributed to making race salient, thereby activating our jurors' egalitarian views. The flexible correction model may also play a role. It is possible that jurors were not aware of the extent of their bias and thus overcorrected. Contrary to our predictions, the unconscious bias juror video did not affect verdict or credibility. However, the video did significantly affect murder counterfactuals. Overall, the video was not effective, but the remedy can be improved. Research suggests that modifying the video to promote perspective taking and providing feedback may improve its effectiveness. We'd like to acknowledge some limitations. The shortened trial transcript does not mimic the amount of information jurors receive at trial. Further, our study does not include deliberation. Further research is needed to draw conclusions on the effectiveness of the video remedy in different types of trials and charges. Additionally, examining victim race may help gain more information on specific scenarios in which race is most prevalent. In conclusion, though the video was not effective at reducing bias, it does impact aspects of jurors' legal judgments and may be more effective if modified. It is crucial that further research is done so that we can determine the most effective way of combating racial bias. Thank you.